Hello and welcome to another episode of the Revenue Revolution podcast, sponsored by Joint Flows. Today we are joined, or lucky to be joined, by Seth Killian. Seth Killian, amongst many hats he wears, is the Director of Sales and Marketing Operations at Ever.ag. But amongst that also, he's building out a community for people who are creating content as well. Welcome to the show. How are you, Seth?
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm doing great today. Good to be finally on with both of you guys. I've watched shows and now I get to be on the show. So this is kind of a surreal moment for me.
Amazing. It's great to have you on. Tell our listeners a little bit about you. Who is Seth Killian?
Yeah, well, I like tall glass of Cabernet, long walks on the beach, but I don't think your audience is too interested in that sort of thing. You hit the nail on the head earlier. My big fancy $3 title is Director of Sales and Marketing Operations for a company called Ever.ag. We are a business-to-business software company, and we serve the agriculture space. Having a lot of fun over there. I've been with the company for about a year and a half. For the past 9.5, 10 years or so, I have been in the software space, mostly holding sales or sales adjacent type roles, working with chief sales officers, chief revenue officers, just to help support the overall growth of the company. Over the last 10 years, every company that I've worked for has been backed by private equity. So fast moving mergers and acquisitions, rebrands, and we call it the dog year effect. They say dogs age 6 years for every 1 year, that humans live or something like that. It's the same thing inside of private equity backed SaaS environments. You learn like 6 years worth of lessons inside of 1 year. And then prior to the last decade or so in private equity backed SaaS, I have a background in food and beverage. So I worked at an interesting place, worked for a company called Levy Restaurants. They're based out of Chicago, Illinois, and they owned a food and beverage distribution rights for all of the basketball and hockey arenas here, almost all in the United States. And they also do a lot of stuff with NASCAR racing and PGA Golf Tour. And so I spent 8 years working for them. They put me through their quality rotation program. I worked every single position in the arena. I was a fry cook one night. I was a bar back the other night. I was on the receiving dock loading, 20 pounds of frozen chicken breast off of a truck one night. Yeah. And then the next night I was sitting with the bean counters in the office, learning how to format spreadsheets, which I did not like. And so I cut my teeth with them. They're kind of my alma mater in terms of my career. So yeah, I was looking at it the other day and I realized, oh my God, I'm coming up on 20 years of professional work, like full-time, post-college professional working experience. And I thought, dear Jesus, where's the time gone? But yeah, that's a little bit about me professionally.
Amazing. Thanks for the intro. So I think you've got quite a vast background as well, and many different, as I said earlier on, many different hats that you wear as well. One of the places I actually wanted to start is you're obviously a co-founder of a marketing agency previously as well, which was successfully acquired. So congratulations to you for that. Talk a little bit about the transition from that. So going from being a co-founder, so, essentially the buck stops with you, towards, being part of supporting that leadership team at other companies which you perhaps haven't founded. And how have you found that transition?
Yeah, that was a wild time, a good time. Learned a lot of great lessons. And so I actually should introduce you guys to my former co-founder. He'd be someone who's awesome to get on the show as well. His name is Sean Redinger, great guy. And so it was 2020, COVID hit, everything's shutting down. We're right in the middle of it all, right? Right in the middle of everything. And it's really impacting the company that I was working for at the time. They were called Vibe HCM. They sold HR software. I'd been with them for, I don't know, 3.5 years at that point. And they made the decision, right, wrong, or indifferent, it doesn't matter. They made the decision that they were going to, as company MRR was just taking a nosedive, we made the decision that we were going to have to furlough a certain percentage of our employees, and thankfully I was not caught up in that group, but everyone else was going to be taken down to 60% of their salary, but you only had to work 3 days a week. Okay. So again, whether you agree or disagree with a situation like that, it doesn't matter. They were very transparent. Company leadership was very transparent about what they did and why they did it. And so I just looked at that and said, okay, well, I can't support a family on 3 days a week. And I appreciate the fact that they kept me, and they were very transparent. And it only took about 4 months, and then they brought us all back for a time, full time. We just had to get through the rough patch. So no hard feelings, but it led me to do my own thing. And it led me to start something on the side, working at night, on the weekends, putting in a lot of sweat equity. And I looked at it and I said, I do feel that I can sell services, like professional services that I believe in. I know sales, I've sold, and I'm really interested in building something that is my own. I don't have to answer to anyone else, right? And so in the beginning month really of that entrepreneurial journey, I joined some professional communities and got introduced to my co-founder. And we decided that we were going to focus on the real estate niche. So residential real estate agents. There are a million of them here in the United States. And so the market is huge, right? And there's a lot of churn inside of the market. There's a lot of new influx of new agents every year. And there's a lot of people either retiring or quitting or just doing it part-time. And so we put together basically done for you lead generation and appointment setting and database nurture services. We white labeled a CRM, and for many agents gave them a CRM for the very first time. Our appointment setters would call their leads for them. It was great. It took us a long time to build that. I mean, there were a lot of different iterations of that service bundle that were not product market fit that we had to get to before we got there. But it got to the point where, gosh, I think it was November or December of 2020. And I had started to make more at the side gig, the thing that I co-founded, than I was at my 9 to 5. And it was much more interesting to me. And so I said, if I'm able to do that, only doing it part-time, I should probably quit my 9 to 5 and just go be the next Elon Musk or whatever. Right? Pick your favorite, entrepreneur, billionaire, and insert his or her name there. Okay.
Was it bootstrapped, Seth? Was
100% bootstrapped. Yeah.
Amazing.
All sweat equity, staying up until 11 or 12 o'clock at night, sometimes later, because we've got to get the proposal out. I mean, it's all the stories that you've heard. And I imagine you guys kind of know what I'm talking about, right? Because of what you're doing with joint flows. So it wasn't SaaS, it was professional services. So it's different, but it was very much like we're hacking our own funnel. We're trying to do anything and everything we can to get it off the ground. So I put in my 2 weeks notice. I gave them 30 days notice to get the company through the holidays and over to January. I quit. I did it full time. Loved it. Month over month over month over month, we're eclipsing our sales goals. Eventually, I want to say it was April, I think April or May, we got to, I think, 30,000 MRR, which was enough for us to take a good paycheck. Before it had been like, okay, it's another month of peanut butter and jelly, it's just, we're just tightening our belt, doing whatever we can. Fortunately, I was in a position where I could go 4 or 5 months without a paycheck. And we finally got to that point, and it was so much fun until it wasn't. And I faced terrible burnout. I faced health issues. My mind was not right. And I'm being very vulnerable, very transparent.
I appreciate it.
I thought I was heading towards the American dream, and it turned out to be a nightmare. And so I just looked at it and said, I'm quickly losing patience for our business model. And I have 4 children, and I'm now, rather than cherishing my time with them, I'm coming to view time spent with them as time that I can't spend building the business.
Yeah.
That's misalignment, right? And so, and there were all kinds of issues, but between my wife and I just looked at it and said, "Oh my God, I am misprioritizing things. I'm cross-threaded here. This is not good." So there had been another company, another larger digital marketing agency that was selling into the real estate space, technically a competitor, but we kind of collaborated on a few things. They had been courting us. They had expressed an interest to do perhaps a joint venture. And we said, well, what if you bought us? And it was like I had confidential conversations with my co-founder. And so they bought us. I took a very small equity payout. I mean, really, how much equity can you build in 1 year, right? Let's be honest. And so I took a small equity payout, re-entered corporate America like within 3 weeks. I called a mentor. I said, "Do you have a spot for me?" And he said, "Let's go. Right? Let's get you back on my team. Let's do it." And I helped to oversee the transition. So I kind of did two things again for a little while. And my co-founder and I, everything's copacetic. We're still good. We send pictures of our kids back and forth to one another, and we celebrate life milestones. And so re-entering corporate America after that was hard. I found, guys, that I had jumped up a level. I had leveled up.
That's what I was going to ask is, did you find that having that entrepreneurial line on your CV was an advantage over the competition when you were going for an interview?
Well, because I called a friend and I had a kind of like a backdoor entrance, I didn't necessarily have to compete in the open market, so to speak, but I think that it would have helped me. But you know what it did, though? Here's just personally speaking. I mean, the biggest thing that it did for me was a total sense of ownership. Total sense of ownership. Because when you are in that entrepreneurial space, as one of you said earlier, the buck stops with you, right? And I'm accustomed to my co-founder and I making decisions. We'd have our wrap-up call, from 5 to 6 o'clock every day. And it was our wrap-up call, and we would make decisions that would impact the direction of the entire business. Plus, our virtual assistant, we had a small army of virtual assistants spread throughout the globe that were helping us, and 30 to 40 clients that we were serving as well. And so we're making decisions, and we have to think through. I remember the first time I made a decision that I thought made total sense, and he was kind of on the fence about it, but he was like, "I trust you." And it did not work out. It was not the right. And I had to say to myself, "Seth, the buck stops with you. Stop making impulsive decisions. Sit down and think through things before you make these calls. You are affecting livelihoods." And so something happened inside of me. It was kind of like an internal fortification where your structural engineering gets beefed up a little bit. And the ability to handle stress, the ability to think through things, the ability to accept ownership, and the ability to look at someone who has a title much higher than you and just speak to them like an equal was instantly there when I re-entered corporate America. So I'm thankful for that time. I'll do it again at some point in the future. It will be different from the lessons that I learned, but I'm very thankful. It was almost as if it was a professional development boot camp. Those 12 months I was doing that, for sure.
Yeah, I think, and that totally resonates. I think what I found as well with our journey we're going through with Joint Flows is you're just exposed to so many different facets of the business than you would have typically been. And so you just automatically learn on the job, you're building up your skill sets. I can imagine by reintroducing yourself back into the corporate world, you've almost instantly like upskilled yourself during that period of time anyway, and that can only be advantageous for you.
It's true. It's true. One of the things that I noticed too was that, how fast moving startups are, right? I mean, it's just, you can pivot, you can try 3 different things inside of 1 week, right? Whereas if you go to a larger business to business organization and you're like, "Hey, what if we tried, I don't know, even something simple like getting them to install the Facebook pixel or something like that, right? So we can do retargeting." Is like, well, let's do a cost benefit analysis. And it's like, oh my God, stop miring down the decision process. Let's act. Let's move. So one of the because you have to move fast like that in the small space, in the startup space. And so that's something that I brought back into corporate America too, was the drive and the desire to iterate very quickly, bottom up iteration, right? We found something that works. It may not be perfect, but let's take the one piece of what we put in place that works and let's iterate some other things so we can get more falling down through the funnel. Let's go fast. That is something that corporate America does not understand. They don't get it. And so when I can bring that level of hustle and urgency with me back to the table, let me tell you, the executives recognize that. It's like game recognizes game, right? So
yeah,
the CRO, the CSO, the CFO, right? All these, the executive leadership team, they want to move fast too. They may not seem like they want to move fast, but they do. If they're going to hit their variable compensation piece, they need to move fast and produce results. And so they can feel, I'm speaking in the most generic terms possible, they can feel as if they are surrounded by people who are not moving fast. And if you can be that individual who steps into the team and says, yo, let's go, people, they recognize that you are their man in the trenches, so to speak. Okay. And it's actually a benefit to you. It creates a lot of cohesion and stickiness between you and the executive, which is very good. That's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so just one more question on the startup as well, because I know we have a lot of founders who listen to our show as well. You mentioned that eventually you'll probably do something again, but this time it will be different. You know, and part of that is obviously there is a learning curve that goes along with taking on that type of lifestyle. What was the biggest learn that you had, and what was most surprising about it?
Wow. Okay, that's a big question.
That's typical heaters
We
question.
throw grenades, yeah.
Yeah.
Always throw a grenade into the mix.
Right. Well, it's like 4 or 5 different ways I can answer that. So I think the biggest thing here was, and I've never really said this publicly, but I began to lose, I'm trying to say this in a diplomatic way, real time. I began to lose respect for the market that we were selling to. And so if you cannot respect your ICP, well, you're probably selling to the wrong ICP, right? Or you need to change, you know what I'm saying? Like you need to do whatever sort of soul searching, check up from the neck up exercise you should do. And I tried that and I just could not get to the point. One of the things that I do like about the corporate environment is everybody does behave. Everybody behaves, right? You know that there's an HR department who is going to get on you if you don't behave. Okay. So everybody is by and large doing what it is that they're supposed to be doing. What I found selling to our target market was that they didn't really have a boss, so they could do whatever they wanted to do. And I unfortunately saw the worst results of that. And one of the things that just absolutely shocked me was how many chargebacks we had. So we would sign someone, we would deliver incredible service, generate tons of leads, set tons of appointments. They would even have closings, right? And think of it, and I don't know what the economics look like anywhere else, but in the United States, if you close a house, 2 to 3% of that is going to go to the real estate agent. The average home price in the United States is something like $350,000. Do the math. We're talking about a significant sum of money that is going to the real estate agent. So for every closing that we brought them, it was a really good, lifetime value, so to speak, because oftentimes that client's going to boomerang back to them. And so one of the things that I realized was, oh my gosh, like I'm dealing with individuals who may or may not think like business owners. They may or may not think like professionals, because the barrier to entry is actually kind of low. And so that was very frustrating to me was, you'd set up calls with someone and then 6 times straight, they'd kind of blow you off. You deliver results for someone and then lo and behold, they would charge back on the card. They'd put in a refund for the card. And so then we'd have to fight for that. And that was that was a contributing factor towards my burnout as well. Was just like, I can't see myself working with this ideal client profile. I keep using that term, perhaps I'm using it incorrectly, but I can't see myself serving this market long term. I'm just kind of getting burned out with the behaviors. And so that was something that I just looked at and said, all right. And I've thought about, when I do crack back into entrepreneurship again, it's definitely going to be SaaS. I'm not a coder, so I'll need a technical co-founder, right? I'll need someone who understands that. But it will be SaaS, heck of a lot easier to build something once and maintain it over time and then go sell it a billion times rather than a service-based model, right? And also the people that I'm selling to, they will probably have to be like me, right? They'll probably have to be, sales and marketing operations individuals who are accustomed to a high-tech SaaS environment. So that's where my mind has been at recently. Those are some of the biggest lessons that I learned. So some of them are tough lessons, right? Those aren't easy lessons to learn. It's not all rainbows and butterflies and apple pie. I kind of got punched in the face, but I learned some lessons, and I'll know next time.
And there are a lot of those lessons that I think Hitesh and I can relate to in terms of the ICP, in terms of progressing opportunities, dealing with clients. Like, I think when you start a business, it's a little bit, all guns going, and then you start actually pitching and then landing the first clients, and then it's a different story. Steph, just to transition the conversation a little bit around communities, like you're very big on building a network, and you do that extremely well. You've got a lot of followers on LinkedIn, for instance. What drives you to keep pushing on that direction?
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. I hope to take the community aspect and turn the volume up on it even more. When I transitioned out of food and beverage into software, that transition was a bit of a rough one for me. So I found myself in a position where I needed to find a new job very quickly. And the industry, that I love. I mean, imagine this, right? You're a bachelor, and you can work 70, 80 hours a week, no problem. No one else pulling you away from that. And you get to work in downtown in a major metropolitan center, right? And I grew up in the country, you know what I'm saying? Like, there was a cow pasture 5 minutes from my house, right? I grew up playing in the woods and going hunting and all that stuff. And so for me, I loved the city, right? And so I would go to the city, and I got to work in the sports arena here in downtown Dallas, where the Mavericks, the basketball team, and the Stars play. So I'm going to work every night, and 15,000 screaming fans are coming, and they're excited to be there, and they spent money to be there, and they want to be there, and the energy is infectious. I love it. And so I loved that industry. I thought I would do it forever. And then I met a girl, and I got married, and baby came along like right away. And when he was born, really for my firstborn, I missed everything. I missed his first steps, teeth, words, solids, you name the milestone, and I missed it. Why? Because I was working. I was working in an industry that thought nothing of working you 70 to 80 hours a week, all nights, all weekends, all holidays. So I found that my life had changed, and my career was no longer conducive to my life. Did not know where to go. Stuck, confused, worried, no community. Didn't even know where my resume was. Didn't even know how to make a resume. No idea how to interview. Hadn't interviewed in 8 years. I was not in a good place, right? If you look at like career fitness, I was pretty sloppy. I was not healthy. And so I looked at it and said, oh my God, I have mouths to feed now. I better never let this happen again. As a provider, right? As a fellow leader in my home here, my wife's looking to me, and it's time to stand and deliver. And so I looked at it and said, I'm never going to let that happen again. And so when you ask me what drives it, it's pain. It's the pain of what I felt nearly a decade ago. True talk. And so I looked at it and said, I got to get on LinkedIn. I got to have a network. I can never let myself become so enclosed and parochial that I can't think beyond the industry that I'm in or my own little bubble of manager coworkers that I work with every day. And so that's really what drove me to do that. And so I've been on LinkedIn for a long time. I've been a fan of having a robust digital presence for a long time. I think that digital anonymity is a form of poverty in this new job economy, this new gig economy. I certainly dive into that if you want me to, because that's a charged statement, I know. But if you can't be found online and you're looking to get hired, that ain't good, brother. That ain't good. And so I just looked at it and said, I want to be as visible as possible. And so I just began building and building and building and building my network. And it was, I don't know, it was around December of 2022 whenever I realized that I really needed to step up. I've got enough experience now to where I can start lifting up my own voice. I can start sharing lessons to the younger Seth. What do I wish I had known 15 years ago or 12 years ago that I sure as heck didn't know? And so that's what motivates me to share every weekday lessons on career health and proactivity. And I don't want to do it by myself. I get lonely. And so I want a small but mighty group of creators that I can just learn from and get encouraged from. There are days where I'm like, oh God, I don't even know what to post today. And then I'll see someone that I follow and I'll see what they post. And I'm like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And it encourages me, keeps me moving. And I think that's a big piece of community as well. Pick you up when you get low, right? And you grow together.
Yeah, well done. That's really good. I'm part of these groups, as you know, and we found a lot of value from being connected to, like Joe, who was on the podcast, for instance, who we wouldn't have met otherwise. So there's a lot of value, and what I really liked about it is it's not solicited. Like it just happens because naturally you get to speak to people, and you've got common things that you share with them. What would you give in terms of advice to someone who's starting on that journey? So I started personally on that journey on LinkedIn, posting every day at the beginning of the year. And man, like, the first few months, they're painful. Like, you get 5 views, 3 likes, 1 comment, and it's discouraging. What advice would you give?
It is. Yeah, so I think that something Gary Vaynerchuk,
it's trigger word.
Right. Love that guy. Bit of a fanboy there, so I'll let you say it. You can do it. You do it. Go on, Seth. Yeah. Teach him.
He's a great guy. I mean, I've been following Gary Vaynerchuk. Is actually a really funny story. When I was selling meetings, events, and travel software, it was my first job that I got when I transitioned out of food and beverage into software. So I was a BDR. I started beating the phones up, making 150 dials a day, and it was freaking brutal because there was after outreach. And so I called a guy. So the sales executive that I supported said, Seth, you're the only one that's trained on how to deliver a live product demonstration. So I'm a BDR and I was trained on how to deliver demos. That does not make sense, but it's what the company did at the time. So my sales executive, I'm setting appointments for him, right? He sets an appointment for me so I can be his solutions engineer. It's so weird. It makes no sense, but that's the way it was. I don't even know that guy's name anymore. It was so long ago. So he sets a meeting with me, and the guy that hops on the call was the guy who had just thrown the event where Gary Vaynerchuk was a keynote speaker. And it was one of Gary V's first keynotes. This is how long ago this was. Okay. So I looked up his event. I was doing research on his event. And sure enough, there's a younger Gary Vaynerchuk, and it's a highlight reel. And I was like, bro, that guy's fire. I love that guy's message. That's great. And so that's how I learned about Gary Vee, was just sort of organically. And I remember listening to one of his Ask Gary Vee sessions. I don't even know if he does them anymore.
He
And
does.
this is old school. And he was saying, if you have made up your mind that you are passionate about something and that you want to do it, you want to plant your flag, okay? Don't give up after 6 months. That makes no sense. And he said it in typical Gary Vee confrontational style, kind of like a how dare you, you know? And
yeah,
I looked at that and I said, that makes a ton of sense for me too. Long-term results are the ones that I'm interested in, not short-term results. I'm in it for the long term. And there's also someone who, Darren McKee, he's on LinkedIn as well. And I follow a lot of what he says too. And he's like, yeah, I mean, I've been posting on LinkedIn for the last 1,150 days. So that's like 3 years or whatever. I can't do math. And he's like, when I first started, it was like 17 views or 2 comments. One of them was my mom or something like that, you know? And, but now you look at where he's at, and he's got a sponsor. He does his own thing. He's able to blow it up. He's connecting people in the comments. Hop in the comments, tell people what you do. People are getting jobs because of what he does. And I look at that and I'm like, oh my God, he's my freaking hero. Like, I love what it is that he's doing. Long-term is best. Stick with it. It's just like the compounding interest effect on money in the bank.
Yeah.
For the first 10 years, you're not going to see much, right? But the last 10 months of a 20-year period are more powerful than the first 10 years. You see what I'm saying? That compounding effect. You never get that upswing, that hockey stick type growth, unless you get through the 10 months of nearly flat stuff. Now, a community can help with that, right? Getting plugged into multiple communities can help that. Posting and ghosting definitely doesn't help you, right? Posting and then just disappearing off LinkedIn for 6 hours. I get it. Some of us work 9 to 5s and you have to do it. I've had to do that on certain days. But the best advice would be stick with it. Stick with it. We always want the proficiency that you see on rep 100. But you don't get there without 99 reps of low skill first. And you've just got to get through those, right? The chefs that can cook the most delicious omelets, period, made a lot of crappy omelets first. It's just part of it. If you can white knuckle your way through that and make it through, you will get to the other side eventually. You just have to keep it going, right? I've only been doing it for 8 months, and I've seen a lot of people start and stop, and they're like just totally gone. They're not even on the platform anymore. It's wild to me. Here I am. I just crossed 250,000 views, which is pretty small compared to some of the major creators on the platform, but much more than I ever thought I'd have, right? I mean, who am I? I'm not an influencer. I'm just a normal guy. But you don't get that unless you first go through those months of, 17 views on a post or something like that.
We had sorry, Seth. We had Jack Nico. I don't know if you listened to the podcast. It was one of the first episodes, and he's an AE from Salesloft, and he's built a couple of communities, and he's been posting on LinkedIn on a daily basis, I would say. And his advice is, do not do it for the gratification. Like, do it because you want to help. Do it because you want to, spread a message. But if you do it for the likes, this won't work.
It's a fickle master to serve. It really is. I mean, for me, one of the biggest things was the clarity of thought that comes from forcing yourself to write. It was really easy for me to just set up, to want to set up my phone right here and just start pontificating, because I feel like I can talk your ears off, man. And so that's my default. I want to speak, I want to make videos, I want to make audio type stuff. But when you force yourself to sit down and write it out, and I use ChatGPT to edit, not to generate. I'm going to generate my own stuff myself. And it might be convoluted and wordy. And then I'm going to straighten it out and then send it to ChatGPT and say, replace all the complex words with simple words, please. Right. Also, if you think there could be a stronger hook, then go ahead and give me 5 variations of the hook, please. And that's about all I'm going to do. But the process of generating your own text yourself, what it does is it sorts out the messy spaghetti pasta nonsense of your thoughts, and it just lays everything out very straight and very clear. And doing that over an extended period of time allows you to snap into talk tracks and consultation calls very quickly and easily. It is a very worthwhile process to go through just to sort your own brain out.
Yeah.
And then eventually you also get to the point where maybe you've got enough volume to where you've escaped, right? You've escaped the gravity well of anonymity. And then you can start connecting people, and you can start sharing your own knowledge, and you can start serving your audience more. Kind of difficult though if you're only connected to like 103 people. So you got to crank up those connection numbers. You know what I'm saying? The power of a network is being able to bring stuff to you that is far away, and being able to take your message and send it far away. It's nothing more than an API connection to the rest of the world. That's really how I've been thinking of a network. There was a sociology paper put out in 1973 talking about the strength of weak ties. There wasn't no LinkedIn back then, right? But it was talking about the concept that weak ties, where you don't really have many people in common, can oftentimes do more for, actually almost always do more for you in terms of bringing net new opportunities into your life than strong ties, where you have multiple crosswise connections, right? So if you're connected to the same people who are all connected to one another, I would submit to you, you have a bunch of strong connections. Overall, you have a very weak network. The way to have a strong network is to build it full of people that you are only tangentially connected to. You want access to new network clusters. You want to throw your hooks out as far and as wide as possible. And I look to lists that LinkedIn produces, or Forbes Council lists, or things like that. Anytime somebody puts a top 20 AI content creators to follow, I'm gonna I don't care if they have 40,000 connections. I'm going to send them a personal connection request, and I'm just going to shoot my shot and see how many of those I can get out there. And lo and behold, my second degree network is in the millions. The millions. Yeah. And even though my first degree is only 13,000.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
As Hitesh says, you're 3 connections away from knowing David Beckham.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. It is what I say. Awesome, Seth. It's been great having you on the podcast. We do have another thinker of a question which we usually wrap up on. So the question is, throughout your whole career, and you've obviously got a vast career as well, so it might require a bit of thinking. What is your best memory to date?
So I'm gonna have to edit this part out. There might be a lot of white space here.
For those of our listeners who are listening in the car, Seth's gazing into the skies at the moment, getting his thoughts together.
I'm striking a heroic pose, looking off into oh my gosh. You know, there have been streaks, right, where I just feel absolutely on fire. And then there are times where I get to do something very creative and rewarding that maybe was like a lot of heavy lifting and pain to build out, but was pretty rewarding. So one that I think of was back in 2018. I had the opportunity to step in to a team of 3 BDRs. They were there, they were present, they were ready to go, and kind of fully ramped. But the process that they were working in were just absolutely not optimized. Inbound only, no dashboards, no reports, no tracking, no optimization. And over the course of the next 4 or 5 quarters, grew that from 3 to 7, took our inbound lead conversion rate from 25%. Can you believe it was so low? To like 65%, and took them outbound as well. For 2018, 7 out of every 10 deals that we closed that year as a company originated with my small but mighty group of BDRs. Generated 62 million in qualified, like stage 2 plus qualified pipeline in 8 months, and the company experienced 105% growth that year. That was a hot streak for me. I was absolutely, you couldn't say nothing to me. Nobody could say nothing to me that year. I was just like, you shut up, peasant. I'm in charge. I am on the
Look
top
at
of
the
world level.
numbers. Look at the numbers.
Yeah, that's right. Look at this, buddy. Like, you see the numbers what my team's putting up? And that was a hot streak. That was awesome. And it kind of ended because the company pivoted into a different direction and sort of blew up the team and rebuilt it in another city, and I had to transition it to someone else, and that was its own thing. Another one, I'll go back just a little bit further, would be, and this is kind of an interesting little highlight that I always tell everyone, not necessarily the proudest moment, but an interesting moment from my career. I served a slice of cheesecake with raspberry syrup drizzled on top to Michael Jordan.
No way.
Yeah.
That's
In
good. This is
his personal suite at I think it was called the Top Warner Cable Arena in Charlotte, North Carolina. I think it's called something different now. I don't even know. But when I was working there for a couple of years, I got to hand that directly to him. Thank you, young man. And I just sort of like melted a little bit as he spoke directly to me, you know. And then I was sweating so much. I was so nervous. I was so young too. And so that was definitely an interesting moment for me in my career as well. But probably the small little moments here and there would be when the people that I've coached get promotions.
Yeah.
That just warms my heart to no end. When people call me and they're like, hey, man, the lessons that, you know, you kind of had to beat me over the head with a little bit, or the lessons that you demonstrated, I'm actually using them now as I'm leading a team too. And I just want to thank you. When I get those text messages, honestly, sometimes I tear up a little bit. I'm like, it's working like this. I'm really having a net positive impact in the world. And that is, that's immeasurable. It really is.
Awesome.
Well,
thank you once again for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think our listeners could listen to you forever. So we might have to get you back on at some point. But thank you again. And awesome. This has been the Revenue Revolution podcast, sponsored by Joint Flows. Until next time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Gary, if you're listening to the show, please answer my DMs, man.
We're trying to get him on, so if anyone can help that happen, make that happen. That's great.
See you later, everyone.